welcome back to the channel. This is the bearing that failed on us while we were baling hay. We're literally 4 bales into the season, and that clearly caused us to stop, and we had to get the neighbor to come help us. Like I mentioned, previous video showed you the bearing literally failed about 4 bales into the season, and it could be for many things. So unfortunately on this Hesston Baler, none of the bearings are greasable. They're all sealed bearings, which is good and bad, all I guess in a sense. Great if you're terrible at greasing and keeping up with maintenance, and terrible if you are good at those things and would grease it regularly. I feel like that bearing would last much longer. Now I don't know how old this bearing is. Could be the factory one, could not be. It's hard to say. I really don't know. Unfortunately, this is old enough that the monitor doesn't keep a complete bale accumulation number, so it's just kind of where it is. However, we've got it out, and I'm going to show you what all happens. This is the hydraulic press I use to get it out. You don't have to be anything this fancy. You could just simply use a bearing puller or a pulley puller. Both of those would work really well and likely be just the solution you need. What causes the issue with getting these off is this key. So inside of here, you'll see that keyway. You see this keyway, that's that ledge I was talking about. What you could do is you get a wedge essentially. I can't get that in there quite like I want. Anyhow, so use your imagination with me. Pretend this is in correct. You could get a wedge that'll fit in here and drive it through with a hammer and use that to pull this wedge out. Once you pull that wedge out, this should come off pretty easily. Probably use a bearing or a pulley puller still. I'm not real sure. Just kind of depends on your strength and maybe how difficult it is to get some leverage to pull on that. All right. I don't know what you actually call this. I didn't look in the parts book, but we'll just call this the bracket. So this is actually going to hold your bearing in place. And if you look here, you can see there's a notch right here, and there's a notch down below right here. Now those two notches are there. Let's pretend this is a good bearing. My wife's on the way back from AGCO with it. But those two notches line up. You'll put this in, and then you can spin this. Now, if it was clean, I haven't cleaned it. It'll set in there, and it'll spin around real easily. If it doesn't, let's say you do have it cleaned up and it doesn't spin around really easily, you actually need to replace this at that point. You can buy it. It's like $260 some odd to buy the bearing and this together, but to buy the bearing only, which again a good bearing, not one that's destroyed, is $64. Clearly this is the cheaper option, and if you catch these in time, it won't do any damage. So like if you look inside of mine, there is no damage in here that's not something I can't clean up. Nothing's gouged, nothing's chipped. You know, I was pretty lucky that this part kind of saved and protected where the bearing race is inside of this bracket. Let's clean this up real quick, and hopefully we'll have a new bearing here shortly. I'm going to cut this old one off just because it's not simple to get to. I would love to record it and show you how I did all this, but unfortunately inside of here, there's just nowhere for me to show. So I'm going to show you the best I can out here to help you if you have this problem on your Hesston Baler. And to my knowledge, these are the same on Hesston 856, 956, 565, 560 obviously, 555, and 550, I think. I might be wrong on some of the part numbers, but it's a common bearing design that they had, and they ran with it for several years. The bearings right here are ovaled from the factory, or sorry, the shafts. The shafts are ovaled from the factory, and essentially what's going to happen is you're going to put that new bearing on there, and you have to twist it. Now, you can twist it pretty easily by doing this. So in this one there's a hole in the top. Oops. Now I'm going clockwise because I want to say that's the way I had to go before on the other ones. Really don't remember now, but we're going to roll with it, and if it don't move, then we'll know we got to go the other way. Okay. There we go. Now I focus. So looking at it, you really can't tell that this is oblong or oval or anything like that. But looking at the shaft, I still can't tell it's oblong or oval either. So it's kind of a weird situation, but this is a locking collar. It's going to lock your bearing in place. The new bearing comes with a new locking collar, so if you had to cut this off, you could. Yeah, pretty rough. On this farm, you are far more likely to get bit by the baler than any of the dogs. And bad bearings are the lead cause of getting bit around here. So now we have this all cleaned up. So you can see that with a wire brush, you can simply clean the inside of it, get any big dirt or even gouges out if you need to. Maybe use a file, or if it's a really big gouge and you have to, use a grinder, I suppose, as possible. So once you get to this point, now you're going to need your bearing. So the bearing, the part number, there's your part number you're going to need. And if you noticed on that label, it said made in the USA. So unlike John Deere, they actually make some stuff here. I'm not going to say they make everything here, but I would say it's a larger portion made here than what John Deere does. So yes, that is a dig at John Deere. So again, we're going to line up this notch right here that you see at the top, this notch that you see at the bottom. We're going to take those, we're going to put this through here, and then all we're going to do is spin it. Now mine doesn't spin well, but it spins well enough. I'm going to be able to tap this and it'll fall right into place. We've got this in, we can spin it freely. Now, you'll notice a couple of different things. So on this, it has flat spots. Here, basically all the bolts go. Those flat spots need to be to the outside, because that's where your bolt head is going to fit through. So with that knowing that that has to be to the outside, I also know that this flange right here on my bearing that we talked about earlier, that has to go to the same side that these bolts are going to be on. Because what's going to happen is this locking collar is going to go on. One more thing you're going to notice, look at the thickness of the inside of this bearing, right? Real thin right here, real thick right here. You're going to notice the same design on this part. It's going to be thinner on one side, thicker right here where my fingers are, and on the opposite side of that, it is thinner. It's like that on purpose. It's not a manufacturer's defect. What's going to happen is you're going to put these on the shaft like so, and then you're going to twist them. This is going to lock this bearing in place, and then you'll tighten this set screw. So you got a hole for the set screw. You've also got another hole right here. This hole is what you're going to use to tap this to lock it, and to spin it on that shaft and get some pressure on it to lock it. Do not use this part where your set screw is, because if you mess up the threads inside of there, now you don't have a way to lock it. To clean this shaft off, you can do something simple like this is actually a wood sanding block. It's 220 grit. That's what I'm going to use. However, you could use, if you had to, you could use your wire wheel, or kind of anything you really have to get all this stuff off of here. And all that's for is just to make sure this is going to move freely and be able to ride on there easily. Not terribly uncommon for it to be hard to get started. Alright, so you can see behind me, we got the new bearing in and everything. Now we just got to put this chain back on, which is really simple. If you're not sure how to take the chain off, every chain has a master link. Now this is what your master link looks like. And really the only thing this does is it has a locker, or locking pin, however you want, a retainer, call it what you want. But this is on the back side of it, or on the side that you're facing most likely. If it's not, you're going to have to look on the other side and somebody kind of set you up for failure. But find something that looks like this on the outside of one of your links. So like when it was all together, it looks something like that. You'll notice it looks different than all the others. You're going to pry this up and off. Once you do that, you can take this off, and then this will slide out and it'll disconnect the two ends of the chain, making it to where it falls freely like that. Alright, so the next thing that we need to put on, now that we've got the bearing on, is just this sprocket. Pretty simple. Now, you can tell it's got different pieces to it, or different shape to it. This stays to the front. The other thing is it's got a keyway. This keyway right here, this is going to line up right here on our shaft, And then not only that, but we're also got a key that needs to go in that keyway. Now this is going to lock this gear to that shaft and in turn spin. Alright, that is back on there. You've seen how the master link went on. Finally, we are ready to close this project out and start the next one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a blessed week. We'll see you next time. Since we have all that completed, this project is really done. We're going to wrap this up and move on to the next project. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a blessed week. We'll see you next time.